Save the Semantics, episode 348. It is October 20th, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday afternoon / evening. We are on the cusp of the NBA regular season starting tomorrow. Just around the corner, literally. It's right there. As I've exclaimed, I am excited to see what this upcoming season holds for us fans. I think, I've already talked about all of just kind of what the matchups are going to be and everything, or given a bit of a brief preview, but I think that one of the biggest things that I'm going to be looking for, because a lot of the time, I've noticed, you got like these, you always get these like early season kind of like overachievers in the earlier part of the season. Last year, the case of that was with the Brooklyn Nets. Honestly, the Warriors too, before they made the Jimmy Butler trade, where they're, the rosters that were constructed at the time were playing above their weight. And we're winning a lot of games that maybe some of the contending teams, some of the better teams in the league were maybe taking the gas off the pedal. I think so. It is. I don't think it's too much to say that getting an early start is important, but there are a lot of cases where it's actually not the most important thing. The most important thing is actually how you finish the regular season. How you start is important in some ways, but it is a long season. It is a marathon and not a sprint, right? As I'm sure a lot of people have already exclaimed. And it is so easy, and it's fun too, but it is so easy to get caught up in overreacting to the amount, the results of each game, because it is so early in the season and there's such a small sample size to pull from, right? Before like 10 games in, we could be like, oh, these are the contenders, right? And I think in a lot of instances, it's just not correct. Like, I'm sure there are going to be some examples of some of the best teams already way ahead in their respective conferences. I mean, last year you saw that with OKC and Cleveland, and I think those sort of held to be true, at least through the end of the regular season. But I think in a lot of other instances, it's not always going to hold water, because sometimes you might just have an outlier. You might just have like a Brooklyn or like a Utah Jazz from like 3 years ago, where they were like an above 500 team and they were like at the top of the Western Conference very earlier on in the season. But I just don't, I think a lot of that is some fool's gold. A lot of that is just, maybe there are some teams that have, are trying to still figure out their roster because they added some significant pieces. And I don't think it's always going to be this huge indicator of what the team is going to ultimately be, right? I think there's going to be ebbs and flows. It's very easy to get caught up in it. I myself have found myself overreacting to certain things. I think last year, I don't know if I overreacted necessarily, but I did turn pretty quickly because I had a lot of skepticisms about last year's team going into the regular season. And when they were like 10-1, I was happy to be wrong. But then a lot of those issues that I had concerns about kind of reared their ugly heads as the season continued, when we saw that players were not shooting like 40-50% across the board on the team, right? When players weren't hitting their shots anymore, I think is when kind of the issue began to kind of arise, and the size limitations and all those kinds of stuff came up, and it's kind of in a way proved me right about my skepticisms about that team, right? I think that it's just going to be, I think it's part of the fun in being like, oh, this team's going to win it all, when in reality they're probably just on a hot streak, and I don't know if it's really considered to be sustainable, right? There's going to be instances of that. I think there's going to be instances of teams going on 5-6 game winning streaks and people being like, oh, this is going to be a turnaround season. They're going to make it to the playoffs. They're going to be in the Western Conference final, whatever. Like, you're going to get those instances. So I am kind of curious to see like who these hot teams are going to be. Are they going to be the actual contenders, or are there going to be some outlier cases of teams that go off on these like winning streaks when in reality they were playing and punching above their weight? Maybe they were winning against teams that currently have that are currently injury prone, like or don't have the roster that they would if they were completely healthy. Those are definitely things to consider as well. But I do it's just fun, you know what I mean? I think on a week-by-week basis, I'll definitely be providing updates. Another thing, on a week-by-week basis, I'm also doing some fantasy basketball for the first time in a few years. I think the last time I did it was like 3-4 years ago. So it's fun to be kind of involved in that again, It's not exactly... It's like very, manageable work. It's really nothing... it doesn't exhaust a ton of my time. It's just fun to be like, oh yeah, these are the players that I expect to have, good weeks and stuff like that. So there's like another element of it too, where I'm sort of like, I'm stat watching for certain players and hoping that they can perform well so that they do well for my fantasy team. So I think that's like another added wrinkle too, along with me, just kind of watching over all of the teams and seeing which ones pique my interest. So there's also individual performers that I'm interested in watching. And a lot of the players that I talked about last week in regards to who I'm interested in as, the just like impact players are on my fantasy teams. So I kind of try to remain consistent in that regard. But yeah, there's a lot of things to just a lot of elements to be excited for, to be interested in, along with the teams. It's just like the individual performers are something to that I'm excited to consider as well. But yeah, so tomorrow, again, Thunder Rockets, Lakers Warriors or Warriors Lakers. I forgot if they're playing in LA. But good first round or good first day matchup. I think so. The Thunder, the Thunder is not there's not really too much to say. They're running back the same roster. The Rockets one is going to be very interesting to see what they're going to do. So they already, I think Ime Udoka already talked about how he's going to run out just this jumbo starting lineup with Amen Thompson at 1, KD at the 2, Jabari Smith at the 3, Şengün at 4, and then Steven Adams at 5. So they're just going all just big 7-footers, which is kind of crazy, other than Amen, right? So I'm curious to see how that's going to look. Defensively, that's going to be a monster, right, to go up against. Offensively, I think is where you have the concerns. Are you just going to be relying a lot on KD to handle the half-court offense? Are they going to be running things through Şengün? I think without having a starting a point guard in the starting lineup, I think is someone like Amen Thompson going to be able to handle that? I think that is maybe the biggest concern, right? In terms of how that team is going to operate. It's entirely possible that all things kind of click and they sort of mishmash together some kind of offense, mostly around a KD and a Şengün, and it just kind of manages to work out. But I do think that in the long term, it's going to be a bit tough to see how they approach things. But I think it will be interesting to see how well that massive lineup is going to fare against not only OKC, but how it's going to work against other teams as well, right? I think when they are playing against some of the smaller teams in the league, a la the Warriors, they are going to have that advantage to their advantage, and should be able to take care of the boards in most regards. But is that going to be sustainable enough to where you're going to be able to, produce enough on the offensive end? I'm not exactly sure, right? So there's a lot to really look at. They're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the Western Conference, but I think there are major question marks with Fred VanVleet out. Is what's the offense function going to be, right? And I think in this case, especially in this opening night, I think there's going to be some hiccups. I don't think it's going to be perfect. And considering how well-oiled a machine OKC is, they're playing at home. It's their ring night ceremony. I think I expect the Thunder are probably going to win. Maybe it's going to be a close game. Maybe the Thunder are able to, or maybe the Rockets are going to be able to counter what they have with the size and everything and the defense. But I just think OKC, if they're all sort of, if everything just kind of works out, they're going to probably win this one, right? I think this first game for the Rockets is going to be a bit of an adjustment sort of thing. So that's going to be sort of the piece that I'm going to be kind of keeping an eye on. Lakers, Warriors. Lakers are going to be out with. They're not going to have LeBron. They're going to have Luka. So how well, is he going to be able to do enough to carry this team? And are the supporting cast going to be able to, do enough, like with an Austin Reeves? Is Marcus Smart even playing? I'm not exactly sure. It feels like they're pretty bare bones, kind of in a similar way to what they were in the playoffs, although in the playoffs, I think I had given them a bit more confidence because they were going up against the Wolves, who I had a lot of question marks about, and it turned out that the Lakers just did not have any depth whatsoever, and I think that sort of question kind of remains with this current makeup of the team as well, right? It's entirely possible that some of the other roster members are going to be able to contribute. Maybe both Reeves and Luka are just going to be enough to put this team over the edge. But I think there's, without LeBron, I think there's going to be, I don't know, it just feels like it might be tough, right, for them. It's entirely possible that Luka just is able to single-handedly carry them over the top, at least for the period that LeBron is going to be out. But I think their depth is like a major question mark, which I don't really think it was addressed during the offseason, right? I mean, they got DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart, but Smart hasn't been playing competitive basketball for 2 seasons now. He's had a lot of injury issues as well. And then, DeAndre Ayton has not really played competitively for the last couple of seasons. And, I think there's a lot of qualms about his commitment and everything. And the way he just plays is not exactly conducive to not always the most conducive to success, as we saw in his last season on the Suns. I mean, nobody was really, I was not watching him at all when he was on Portland, right? Maybe he had some moments here and there, but outside of that, he is a woefully inconsistent player. So, is pairing him with Luka going to be enough? He was a number one, former number one draft pick. There's always hope for someone like that. And maybe that he can turn it around this season. But that's also another thing. So there's a lot of things hinging on stuff, you know what I mean, with the Lakers team. Obviously you can't deny the top end talent, but as we saw in the playoffs, right, there are limitations to that at this point. I just don't think you're kind of back. It's funny, this current Lakers roster has almost reverted to the Mavericks team before they went out and got PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Like, they're kind of in that position again, which, I don't know, for Luka, is that a little frustrating that you're sort of taking like another couple of steps back prior to that sort of finals team, right? I don't know. And you don't exactly have like another ball guard. I guess you have Reeves, right, who's kind of like the Kyrie sort of equivalent or alternative. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know. It's a little, it feels a little wobbly. Like, again, maybe Luka just has an amazing season and he just is able to carry this team. But I don't know. There's some question marks there. Warrior side of things, I'm reiterating a lot about what I've already kind of expressed. It's game one. I feel, I think one question mark is going to be who they start at center. I don't know why they wouldn't start Horford. You know what I mean? I think it would be beneficial to have a stretch five in the starting lineup, plus his, experience and everything, I think would mesh incredibly well with the rest of the starting lineup. So I'm not exactly sure why they wouldn't start him unless they're like, give him the bench role, have him roll with the bench guys, and start Quentin Post instead. I don't know why you would start Trace Jackson Davis in this situation. I don't know. It just is kind of like I'm hoping that they can kind of solidify that, because I think it's pretty important to have kind of a consistent, they were able to cobble together different starting lineups with some of the injuries last year, and I know Steve Kerr was pretty good at that, but I think starting off, wouldn't you want to start Horford? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you want to do that, considering he was one of the major pieces they got in the offseason, for a reason too, right? But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think that, I hope that they can kind of figure that out, and I think they will. I have confidence in that. In terms of like the game tomorrow, I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be close. I feel Lakers-Warriors games have typically been close over the last couple of seasons. And so I think it'll be competitive. But I think it'll be exciting to see like another kind of year in the progression with Jimmy Butler added to the mix. And then again, maybe Horford is able to provide something as well. And then Steph looked great during the preseason in his limited minutes. I have absolute confidence that he's going to carry that forward into the regular season. Another year with kind of the Jimmy Draymond tandem. That's going to be good. I think that's going to be. I think that's going to look good. And I feel pretty good. This is like so much better, as I've already talked about how the feeling I have in comparison to the beginning of last season, right? So like, even if they do start off slow, I have a lot more confidence that they'll be able to turn it around and get themselves in a position to, to be in the playoff standings. So I don't have, like, I'm not going to be panicking. Like, if they're 0-10, obviously that's going to be an issue. But if they start off slow this season, I'm not going to be super worried necessarily, unless there's like issues of like injuries plaguing and stuff. But I don't even want to consider that, right? Assuming health, I would be okay. Obviously I would want them to get a good start, especially in this Western Conference. And if that's sustainable, which I don't know how sustainable it is to be like a hot, like a hot team in the beginning of the season, especially for this older team. But just be in the mix is, I think, especially like earlier on, I think being in the mix, I have confidence that they have the, they'll be able to sustain. It's all just a matter of like managing things well, managing the minutes that someone like Horford gets, managing the minutes that the older players get in general, and hopefully the younger crowd off the bench is able to contribute in a meaningful manner. So it's all about just like management, time management, and because I feel like just the roster makes a lot of sense, right? Again, I just have issues with the size thing, size limitations and all that, as I've talked about forever now. But they made it work last year. I think they're in a better position to make it work this year as well. So, yeah, I mean, two great matchups starting off. And then again, Wednesday is the big one. Wednesday is the one that's going to be the blowout with all of the rest of the teams playing. I'm just going to be watching games all day after work. So I am super excited for that, especially. Anyways, that's going to do it for now. I will give my thoughts on opening night, I think, on either Wednesday or Thursday. And if I happen to skip over a few days, then I will talk about the first two days in during this opening week, and give my thoughts, reactions, what popped out, all that good stuff. We're here. I'm here. Yeah, let's go Warriors. All right, recording this on Wednesday, October 22nd. Doing a quick hitter here at lunch, actually. I wanted to get my thoughts out and then try to post this later tonight, or maybe after work or something, because I found that like recording and giving my sort of thoughts after a game or after a night is a bit more cleaner in terms of presentation and stuff. Like if I wanted to talk about opening night tomorrow, I think it might be a little bit, it'll be dated for sure. I think it just memory serves a lot better when it's closer to the time of something occurring. So I want to give my thoughts. I actually wanted to record something last night too, but just, it's just not the best timing. Anyways, it was great. First two games of the season, I really liked the presentation from NBC. I thought that it just felt appropriate. It felt like it had like a bit more weight to it. I watched a little bit of like the ring ceremony and stuff, and I thought it was cool. Obviously, it's not for me, right? That's much more for Oklahoma City and the fans and everything. But I thought presentation wise, it looked pretty great. And the game felt like a playoff game. It felt like it had that type of weight to it. There was a lot of intensity just straight from the get-go. It was an ugly game for most of it, especially like that first quarter. Like it felt like the only person who was really doing anything consistently was Chet Holmgren. He had a great game overall. And then it went into double overtime, and there was some messiness there. There was some ref stuff going on, which I don't want to get into because I'm trying to avoid talking about the refs. I don't want the refs to have a significant role. Like they should just do their job. There should not be like, you know what I mean. Anyways, it was a great game overall. Really exciting. Went down to the wire. I mean, it went down to the wire twice, 3 times. And yeah, I mean, the Stars came out to play. Shea had a rough first half, and then he turned it up in the second half going into overtime and the double overtime. Şengün was incredible. KD had a quieter game, but he still had 23. And yeah, I think it was just a great start to the season. Felt like a very appropriate start to this season, and I enjoyed it. I think especially I didn't watch like the whole coverage, but I know they had that like interview with like Michael Jordan. They're probably gonna just like do a little drip feed of that throughout the season until they kind of like run out of content, and then they do like another interview with him is probably what they're gonna do. I think, when I heard that Michael Jordan was going to be like a correspondent, or he's going to provide like a voice, like, I don't know what exactly that was going to look like. Like, was he going to be in studio with the other hosts and provide his thoughts? Like, it just felt, I never thought that was going to be the case. Like, it would have been amazing to hear what he was thinking about the current players, but I just don't, he's just so, he's so coveted, and he's so, the part of his mystique and his personality and stuff is the fact that, since he's no longer been in the league, and since he's no longer been a part of the NBA after he sold his share in the Hornets, he's very secretive. Like, he's very reserved, and he doesn't talk a lot anymore. So when you do get those pieces of, conversation that you can get, every little piece feels like something special, even when he's not talking about anything in particular. I saw some clips here and there, and it, like, he was just like, yeah, I mean, he was talking about the game, his level of the game, and all that stuff, and it's like, it's nothing remarkable, but it's because it's coming from MJ, where people are just, like, enamored by it, which I get it, you know what I mean? I understand. Like, there was really no one like him. I don't think anybody has even come close to the type of person he is. I know, like, Kobe tried to emulate that, but again, it's like an emulation, and it's not him, right? So it's just like a completely different factor, and I don't think personality wise and just like in terms of the how much of a of an aura he carries, it's not really comparable to anybody else. I think I mean, part of it is just like the way in which he like has marketed himself, but also it is his personality too, and I think there's nobody in the league currently, and there's nobody who has been historically a part of the NBA that has matched that. So interesting to kind of see him a part of the coverage, even though he's not saying or really providing any analytical critique. I don't think that's his thing. But yeah, first game was great, and really exciting start to the season. Warriors, Lakers, I loved that first game. It had all of the things that I was like wanting to see. It had all of the support that I was looking for. They started Kuminga instead of Horford, and I was in the camp of like, we should start a center. Let's start Horford, but that move was like the injection of energy that they needed. Kuminga played great. He had, like, if he's able to produce at that level consistently, it doesn't have to be like this every single night, but if he's able to do it consistently, I think there is a real shot that they can, like, he can be continue to be like a rotation and significant piece to this team. Again, also, it benefits everyone. It benefits himself and his trade value. Other teams can look at him, and maybe there is like a quote unquote better fit instead of him. But again, he contributed in that win. He had some timely buckets. He was making threes. He had like a huge rebound at the end of the game, which kind of sealed the game, honestly. I know Steph had that huge deep three with like a minute left to go, which kind of sealed the deal. But that was a result of like the Kuminga offensive rebound, which is huge. So he was contributing in all the ways that they needed for them to win. And I thought it was a great kind of first showing, and having him in the starting lineup instead of Horford turned out to be ideal, I think. Horford looked kind of rough out there, and I thought like his age really showed in this game. He had like a couple of nice moments, but like there were some stretches, especially like in the third or fourth quarter, I think, where he had like back-to-back turnovers, which were like I felt like pretty easy sort of unforced errors. And so that wasn't like great, you know what I mean? So, maybe that would sort of start to kind of paper over the course of the season. But I think that rotation decision by Kerr and having Kuminga start was exactly what they needed. And it's entirely possible that he might switch up lineups, which he had done last year and the year prior. So who knows what that looks like, but really liked that decision, and Kuminga looked great as well. Jimmy Buckets was just that stabilizing force. He had, 16 free throws? So he was just, it was just like a march to the charity stripe for him. And that looked great. I mean, that was good for the Warriors, like a continuation from the end of last year. Steph looked great as well. He didn't have like the numbers necessarily to back up all of like the, maybe the numbers didn't necessarily match, like what it looked like, but his presence was there. Again, he had that big shot at the end of the game to kind of seal it. So Steph was Steph, he had like a quiet game, but still impactful in his way. And then you had the production off the bench with a Buddy Hield. He was making his shots, right? Like, it's going to be the Buddy Hield kind of, cycle, that Ferris wheel, like that. We just kind of have to accept that for what it is. But we had, I think, out of the gate, having him score 17 off the bench was huge. And then notably, Will Richards, as I was kind of saying during his preseason, like he feels like a plug and play, fit into the Steve Kerr system of this Warriors team. And he played exactly like what he needed to do, making hustle plays, getting offensive rebounds, timely buckets. He had like a nice fast break where he lobbed it up to Gary Payton. Like it was just like every play he made was like significant. Like, again, the numbers don't show that, but if you watch him play, like he had his stamp in this game, and it's just like he just is like the perfect like Warriors system player, and I love that. So I was very happy with this game, the results of the game. Like they were there was obviously some sloppiness here and there. And then Luka had a crazy game, going for 40 plus. But yeah, just some comments on the Lakers. A lot of my sort of like qualms, I guess, or a lot of the issues I think with this roster that I had when I talked yesterday, or was it yesterday or 2 days ago, about like the fit with the roster and stuff, I think came up. Just like Marcus Smart was just like an absolute just like wild card. He was going just crazy, just throwing himself everywhere. I feel like that type of chaos can be beneficial in doses, but I honestly felt like in a lot of instances it was kind of a net negative to the Lakers. Like, he had 4 fouls in the first half. Like, that was crazy. And so I just don't, in terms of like his production, it's been like a few years since he's been a significant rotational player, like basically since he got traded from the Celtics, right? And then when they traded him, they won. So it's like, I don't know. And then on top of that, he's had some injuries and he's getting a little older. He's in his 30s now. I just don't know if he's going to be the same type of player as he was during his tenure with the Celtics. And I just felt like his chaos just was kind of all over the place. Like, he was drawing fouls, but he was also fouling at the same time. And it just wasn't, I don't know. It just was kind of ugly. I felt like I was just like, dude, get this dude off the floor. Right. He had some, squabbles with Steph. I just didn't like, I understand, like, you could be like disruptive, but he was disruptive in the sense that I felt that it was mostly negative for the Lakers, right? I think, maybe they'll figure out the structure and the fit and everything. Like, they'll be good. They'll win against some bad teams, but without LeBron, it just feels kind of, I don't know, it feels like kind of a continuation of some of the issues that they had towards like the end of last season and into the playoffs, where they just don't have like a lot of strengths, right? Like, outside of Luka and Reeves and maybe Hachimura, they just don't have a lot of like, I don't know, Ayton, you're going to have to rely on him a lot. Like, that center rotation is still kind of a question mark. Like, I feel that the consistency with Ayton is going to be a bit of a problem. Like, he has not been really a good player for the last couple of seasons. I think it's kind of a similar thing to where you're asking a lot out of someone who has not been put into that role for quite some time now. Similar to like a Kyle Kuzma, who was thrown into the mix with the Bucks, and he did not do anything, right? He had a 0-0-0 game in the playoffs. I think Ayton will be a bit more serviceable in comparison to Kuzma because of his position and the fact that he will need to do stuff at that level. And I think playing alongside Luka will at least allow him to have some moments here and there. But I think there's going to be some growing pains with that team, especially without LeBron. I think, I don't know. I think there's going to be some fit question marks with that team, and I think you saw that there. It's only one game again. Like, there's going to be games that they'll win and look good and dominant against some of like the mid-tier / lower tier teams because like no one can really guard Luka. I mean, Kuminga was guarding Luka and he had no chance. But it was like the case of just like Luka versus the Warriors, as opposed to anything. It feels like he has almost kind of devolved back into a team where the fit doesn't work, right? Again, that Mavs team that brought on all of those wings and those centers worked so well because they were so complimentary of Luka, right? He drives, he has that gravity, he kicks it out. PJ Washington like makes those threes. They don't have that now. Like, the only like competent like 3-point shooter is like Reeves. And again, maybe Hachimura, he had some moments there, here and there, but you're not expecting him to be like a spot up 3-point shooter. So I don't know. They're kind of a weird team right now. They still might be good because they have that top end talent, but with LeBron out for however long at the beginning of this season, I think they're going to have some issues trying to make it work. So again, we'll see how that looks, but I loved everything that I saw from the Warriors. And again, it was like not a great, he had a good game, but not like a great game. And they're still trying to figure out like the rotation with Horford and stuff. So there's still things that they can improve on, but really I felt very confident after this game. And it was just like I don't know, it was just like a perfect mishmash of the star players contributing and then the role players doing their thing. So those are my thoughts from opening night. Great first night. And then later today, we just got a slew of basketball just all afternoon, all night. I am just going to be plugged into that. I'm going to be on League Pass. I'm going to be like kind of surfing there, also watching some of the nationally televised games as well. So there's a lot of great stuff happening tonight. And so tonight's going to be like kind of the big one. And I'll try to provide as much thoughts as I can because, I'll try to, I don't know if I'll be able to watch everything, but I'll try to get bits and pieces of the games that I'm interested in. So really excited for tonight, and I'll try to give my thoughts on those games tomorrow. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.